Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going to be taking a look at They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera.
Oh, this is a good one.
It is, right. And for this deep dive, we're going to be going straight to the source, looking at excerpts from the book itself.
Yeah, this book, it really doesn't waste any time. Just throws you right into this world where there's this service called Deathcast, and they notify people on the day they're going to die.
Whoa, talk about a way to wake up in the morning, right? No gentle nudge from the universe, just like, boom, this is it.
This is it.
So it's a really fascinating premise because it just makes you think, like, what would you do if you knew today was your last day?
Exactly, and that's the reality that our two main characters, Mateo and Rufus, they face. They both get this Deathcast call on the same day, and the story unfolds as they navigate their end day, as it's called in the book.
Okay, so before we get too far into their story, I think it would be good to kind of break down Deathcast a little bit more for our listener.
Yeah.
It's a little more than just a phone call, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Silvera paints a really vivid picture of a society that has completely restructured itself around this knowledge of death. Like there's systems in place, there's support groups, special services, even dating apps specifically for people on their end day.
Wow, dating apps. That's
That's wild.
a little dark, but I guess it makes sense in this world, right?
Makes sense.
Everyone's trying to make the most of their last hours, find connections, experience all those things they've been putting off.
Right, and it makes you think about, the impact this kind of knowledge would have on our own society.
Right.
Like how would we approach
That's
relationships,
probably
our
it.
careers?
Yeah.
What would become our priorities
Yeah.
if we knew when time was up?
Heavy stuff. All right, so speaking of heavy stuff, let's talk about Mateo. He's 18 years old. He's basically living the life of a shut-in, caring for his dad who's in a coma, and then he gets the death cast call and is immediately consumed by fear and anxiety.
Yeah, I mean, understandably so, right?
Yeah.
He spent his whole life inside, avoiding risks, clinging to routine, and then suddenly
Routine.
he's confronted with this ultimate unknown, his own death.
Yeah, he even starts humming space sounds, which seems kind of sweet, but also points to how deeply terrified he is.
Yeah,
I mean, space, right? It's vast and unknowable, just like death.
exactly. That's Silvera's brilliance.
Mm-hmm.
He uses these seemingly small details to reveal so much about Mateo's internal world. Like he's yearning for connection, he's yearning for experience, but he's paralyzed by this fear.
And then we have Rufus, our other Decker, as they're called in the book.
Yes.
And he is a complete contrast to Mateo.
Total opposite.
Right. He's more outgoing, more impulsive. He's already experienced loss with the death of his family, so he comes at his end day with a different kind of baggage.
Yeah, he's grappling with this guilt and anger, and there's this rawness to his grief that you can just feel. And, the way his end day starts is just wild.
Mm-hmm.
He's literally in the middle of a fight when he gets the death cast call.
Talk about a dramatic entrance.
I know.
Right? And it immediately sets the tone for Rufus's journey. He is not going to waste his last day on regret or fear. He wants to live it to the fullest, even if it means breaking a few rules along the way.
And that desire for connection, that desire for something meaningful in these final hours, leads him to the Last Friend app.
Right. This is where the story takes a really interesting turn. So for our listener who hasn't read the book, the Last Friend app is basically a way for Deckers to find companionship on their end day.
Yeah.
It's about, finding someone to share those final experiences with, someone to lean on as the clock is ticking down.
Yeah, and it's such a fascinating concept because it raises so many questions like, is this genuine?
Right.
A genuine search for connection or just a way to avoid facing death alone? How do you even begin to form a bond with someone knowing you'll both be gone by nightfall?
Right. And it makes you think about the role of technology in a world like this.
Absolutely.
We're already so connected through our devices, but imagine if those connections became our lifeline in the face of death.
Right. And then Silvera throws in another layer with this thing called the Necro app, which is essentially a hookup app for Deckers.
Okay, hold up. I need a minute to process that.
It's pretty wild.
It's kind of brilliant and disturbing at the same time.
Yeah.
It's like even facing the end, right? People still crave intimacy, connection, even if it's fleeting.
Exactly. And it's against this backdrop that Mateo and Rufus find each other through the Last Friend app.
Mateo is hesitant at first.
Of course.
Of course, right? He's been so isolated, so afraid to step outside his comfort zone. But there's something about Rufus's energy, his determination to make the most of his end day, that draws Mateo in.
And it's so interesting how their personalities clash at first. Mateo is cautious, introspective, while Rufus is bold, almost reckless, and yet there's this undeniable spark between them, this sense that they need each other, even if they don't fully understand why.
Their first meeting is a little awkward, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely.
They bury a dead bird that they find in the
No.
park, which feels very symbolic, like they're acknowledging their own mortality right from the start.
Yeah, definitely symbolic. It's like they're confronting death, burying that fear alongside the bird. And even in this small, seemingly insignificant act, we see the beginning of their connection.
Right.
They're both looking for something, searching for meaning in this shared finite experience.
And as they spend more time together, they start to rub off on each other in these unexpected ways.
Oh, yeah.
Mateo, encouraged by Rufus, starts to take risks,
He does.
steps out of his shell, and Rufus, who's usually all about action, starts to open up emotionally, sharing his grief over his family's death.
It's like they're both pushing each other to grow, to confront their fears, and to embrace the possibilities of their end day. It's a beautiful reminder that even in the face of death, we can still learn, evolve, and connect with others in meaningful ways.
And speaking of embracing possibilities, they end up going to this place called Make a Moment.
Yes, Make a Moment.
Oh, what is Make a Moment?
So Make a Moment is like this massive entertainment complex where people can experience simulated versions of anything they've ever wanted to do. Skydiving, climbing Mount Everest, swimming with sharks. It's all there, but without any of the real-life risks.
So it's kind of like a virtual reality playground for your end day.
For your end day.
Okay. And it raises some really interesting questions about what it means to truly live, right?
Absolutely.
Are these simulated experiences enough? Can we find genuine fulfillment in a controlled environment, or do we need the messiness, the unpredictability of real life?
And how do Mateo and Rufus react to this whole Make a Moment experience? Because we know Mateo, he's uncomfortable with pretty much anything outside of his apartment, and Rufus is always craving action.
Right.
Well, first, they're both drawn to the novelty of it all. Mateo's fascinated by these different worlds he can explore, and Rufus gets a thrill out of the simulations themselves. But as they move from one experience to another, a sense of emptiness kind of creeps in.
It's like they're realizing that these simulations, while technically impressive, lack the depth and the meaning of those real-life experiences. They crave that authenticity, that connection, something that can't be replicated in this manufactured environment.
And their reaction to the train blackout scene really highlights this.
Oh, yeah.
Mateo, even in a simulation, panics in that enclosed space, his claustrophobia taking over, and Rufus, who's usually fearless, finds himself uncharacteristically unsettled.
That's so interesting. Even in this controlled environment, they can't escape their fears, their anxieties, their very humanness. It makes you wonder if we can ever truly escape the reality of our mortality, even in a world where we know exactly when it's coming.
Right, and it sets up this beautiful contrast with the next part of their journey, where they leave this artificiality of Make a Moment and they head back into the real world, the bustling streets of New York City.
And this is where things start to get really interesting. Wouldn't you say they have this encounter with a graffiti artist who's tagging the Last Friend logo on a wall? And it sparks this conversation about how Deathcast has infiltrated even the art world.
It's a small moment, but it speaks to this wider impact of Deathcast on society.
Right.
And it's not just about those who are dying. It's about how this knowledge of death has permeated every aspect of their world, shaping their art, their culture, their very understanding of what it means to be alive.
And as Mateo and Rufus continue on their journey, they encounter a whole cast of characters who are grappling with Deathcast in their own way.
Yeah.
And we meet Mateo's best friend, Lydia, who's a single mom, worried sick about him.
Yeah, Lydia represents this ripple effect of Deathcast. She's not a Decker, but she's deeply affected by Mateo's impending death. She has to figure out how to explain this to her young daughter, how to navigate her own grief while comforting a child.
It's heartbreaking.
It is.
And it highlights how Deathcast doesn't just affect those who are going to die, but also their loved ones, their families, their entire community.
And then there's Rufus's foster brothers, the Plutos, as he calls them. They're this rowdy, loving bunch who are fiercely loyal to Rufus.
I love the Plutos.
Yeah, their relationship is so complex, so full of love and banter and this shared history of loss. And they're each dealing with Rufus's end day in their own way. Some with anger, some with denial, some with quiet sadness.
It's a reminder that even within a chosen family, grief and loss can be experienced in vastly different ways.
Absolutely.
There's no right or wrong way to say goodbye.
Exactly.
And as Mateo and Rufus are navigating their own end day, we also get these glimpses of how society at large reacts to Deckers.
Yeah.
Some people are fearful, some are pitying, some are downright exploitative.
Yeah, Silvera doesn't shy away from showing that darker side of this world.
Right.
There are those who see Deckers as opportunities, whether it's for profit or for some, twisted sense of satisfaction.
It's chilling.
It is.
It's like Deathcast has created this whole new underclass.
Yeah.
A group of people who are both feared and fetishized.
Exactly. And it makes you question, in a world where we know when we're going to die, do we become more compassionate, more understanding, or does that knowledge actually amplify our existing biases and prejudices?
Such a good question. All right, so this brings us to what I think is one of the most powerful scenes in the book,
Oh, yeah.
the cemetery visit.
Yes.
Mateo actually sees his own grave being dug, which is, I can't even imagine how unsettling that would be.
It's a visceral, gut-wrenching experience for him, and it triggers this profound emotional confrontation with his own mortality. He talks to his deceased mother, expresses his fears, his regrets, his longing for connection.
It's such a raw, vulnerable moment that really reveals how far Mateo has come since the beginning of his end day.
Right.
He's no longer just hiding from death, he's actively engaging with it, grappling with its implications.
And Rufus, who's already experienced the loss of his family, finds himself reflecting on their deaths, his grief resurfacing in this space dedicated to remembering those who are gone.
It's a poignant reminder that even when we've lost loved ones, grief can stay with us, resurfacing in unexpected moments, and sometimes revisiting those feelings, those memories can be a way to honor their lives and process our own pain.
And as they leave the cemetery, Rufus does something incredibly symbolic.
What's that?
He gives away his bike.
Well, what is bike?
His bike.
Why?
It's like he's shedding a part of his past,
Oh.
letting go of material possessions that no longer hold meaning in the face of his impending death. It's a powerful act of detachment and a recognition that true value lies in experiences, connections, and the memories we create.
Wow. So they've faced their mortality, they've dealt with some pretty intense emotions, and now Rufus is giving away his most prized possession. What happens next?
Well, seeking a space where they can truly let loose and celebrate life, they head to Clint's graveyard.
Clint's graveyard. Okay.
But we'll save that for the next part of our deep dive.
All right, sounds good. All right, so they're leaving the cemetery. Rufus has just given away his bike, and they're headed to Clint's graveyard.
Clint's graveyard.
What is that exactly?
So it's a club, but not just any club. Clint's graveyard is specifically a space for Deckers.
Oh, okay.
It's a place where people can gather on their end day, let loose, connect with others, and just celebrate life in the face of death.
That's fascinating. So it's like a safe space, a community for people who are all going through this incredibly intense, shared experience.
Exactly. And it's a testament to Silvera's world building, that he creates these nuanced spaces that reflect the complex ways society has adapted to Deathcast.
Yeah.
It's not just about the fear and the grief. It's also about finding ways to cope, to find meaning, to connect with others who understand what you're going through.
I love that it adds another layer to this whole concept of an end day.
Yeah.
Right? It's not just about,
Mhm.
waiting for the inevitable. It's about actively choosing how you want to spend those final hours.
And for Mateo and Rufus, Clint's graveyard becomes a place of liberation.
Okay.
Mateo, who's been so shy and reserved, actually gets up on stage and sings karaoke.
Wait, really? Mateo,
Really, though.
the guy who was humming space sounds to calm his nerves
I know.
earlier that day. That's incredible.
It is, and it speaks to the transformative power of their connection.
Right.
Rufus encourages him, pushes him outside of his comfort zone, and Mateo finds this unexpected surge of courage and joy in the midst of his end day.
I'm getting chills just thinking about it. It's like he finally lets go of his fear and embraces the moment. Such a powerful testament to the way human connection can help us overcome our deepest insecurities.
Absolutely. And it culminates in this beautiful, tender moment where they share their first kiss.
Okay, I have to admit I was waiting for this part.
I know, me too.
Their chemistry has been building throughout the book.
Oh, yeah.
And that kiss at Clint's graveyard just feels so earned, so full of emotion.
It's a moment of pure connection, a recognition of this deep bond they've formed in such a short time. And it reminds us that even in the face of death, love, intimacy, joy are still possible.
It's like all their fears, all their anxiety just melt away in that kiss.
It's beautiful.
Such a beautiful reminder that even on our darkest days, we can still find moments of light connection and pure happiness.
And speaking of darkness, their night takes a sudden turn when they encounter Peck, the guy Rufus fought with earlier.
Oh no, not Peck. I had a feeling he was going to come back into the picture.
Oh, Peck.
What happens?
Well, things escalate quickly.
Oh.
It turns into this full-blown shootout, and Mateo, of all people, ends up saving Rufus's life.
Hold on, Mateo. Our timid, introverted Mateo saves Rufus.
I know.
Wow, that's a huge character development moment.
It is, and it's so unexpected, so powerful. The guy who was afraid to leave his apartment is now risking his life to protect his friend.
Wow.
He shows how far he's come, how much he's grown, and how deeply he cares for Rufus.
Makes you realize that sometimes the most unexpected people can find this incredible strength and courage in the face of danger, especially when it comes to protecting those they love.
Exactly, and this act of heroism solidifies their bond even further.
All right.
They've shared laughter, they've shared tears, they've shared fear, and now they've faced life-threatening danger together.
Wow.
Their connection has been forged in fire, quite literally.
So after this intense near-death experience, where do they go from there? Do they spend the rest of their end day together?
Well, they make this poignant choice.
Mm-hmm.
Mateo decides he wants to spend his remaining time with his father at the hospital,
Okay.
while Rufus chooses to be with his Plutos.
That's a tough decision, but I get it.
Yeah,
They're both drawn back to their roots,
Yeah.
to the people who have shaped them, loved them, been there for them through thick and thin.
it's a reminder that even on our end day,
Mhm.
our choices reflect our values, our priorities, and the relationships that have defined our lives.
And it makes their connection all the more powerful.
It does.
Right? They found each other, they shared this incredible journey, and now they're choosing to honor their past, their families, their own individual paths.
It's a beautiful, bittersweet moment that speaks to the complexities of human connection. You know, even in death, we're still shaped by our relationships, our past, and the choices we make about who we want to be with in our final hours.
And speaking of choices, I thought it was interesting how Silvera doesn't just focus on Mateo and Rufus's end day.
Oh,
He gives us these glimpses into the lives of other characters
He does.
who are touched by Deathcast but aren't necessarily facing their own death that day.
Absolutely. It's like he's weaving this tapestry of experiences, showing us how Deathcast has impacted this entire social fabric. You know, it's not just about the individuals who are dying. It's about how this knowledge of death has transformed the way people live, love, and interact with the world.
Like Delilah the journalist, who's so focused on getting an interview with a famous ducker that she almost walks into traffic.
I know her story is a cautionary tale about ambition, obsession, and the danger of losing sight of what truly matters, even in the face of death.
And then there's Deirdre, who is actually planning to jump off a roof and end her life on her own terms.
Wow.
But then she sees Mateo and Rufus riding by full of life and laughter, and it gives her pause.
It's such a powerful moment. It shows how even the smallest interactions, the briefest glimpses of joy and connection, can have this profound impact on someone who's struggling.
It's a reminder that we never know what someone else is going through.
Right.
And even a simple act of kindness, a genuine smile, can make a world of difference.
And let's not forget Damien, the guy who taught Rufus how to fight.
Right.
He's not a Decker, but he's grappling with his own sense of mortality,
Right.
envious of the clarity that Deathcast brings.
I found his perspective so interesting.
Me too.
He's almost resentful of Deckers
Yeah.
because they get this definitive answer,
Right.
this countdown to their death, while he's left wondering, questioning, and facing the uncertainty of not knowing when his time will come.
It's a reminder that the unknown can be just as terrifying, if not more so, than the certainty of knowing when you'll die.
And then there's that scene where Mateo and Rufus stumble upon a graveyard of payphones.
Oh, yeah.
Such a striking image.
It is.
Right? This visual representation of how technology has evolved, how things become obsolete, how even the way we communicate is constantly changing.
It's a poignant reminder that time is fleeting, everything is temporary, and even in a world consumed by death, life goes on, technology advances, and the world keeps spinning.
It's like even Deathcast can't stop the march of progress, the inevitable flow of time.
Exactly. And it ties into this recurring theme of how technology intersects with our experience of death. You know, we see it in the Last Friend app, the Necro app, this constant stream of information and updates about Deathcast that flood people's feeds.
Right.
It's like death has become a part of their digital landscape,
Right.
something they consume, share, and even commodify.
It makes you wonder if we're truly confronting death or just finding new ways to distance ourselves from it. Are we using technology to process our grief, Or are we using it to create a buffer between us and the raw reality of mortality?
That's a great question, and I think it's something Silvera wants us to grapple with.
Right.
He's not providing answers. He's prompting us to think critically about how technology shapes our understanding of life and death.
And speaking of grappling with big questions, their visit to the travel arena is another fascinating exploration of what it means to truly live. Can you remind our listener about that?
Of course. So the travel arena is like this massive indoor complex where people can experience simulated versions of different countries and cultures. It's like a sanitized, controlled version of travel.
So instead of dealing with the hassle of airports, jet lag, language barriers, you can just pop into the travel arena and experience the world from the comfort of a controlled environment.
Exactly. And at first, Mateo and Rufus are both intrigued. Mateo, who's never left New York, is excited to see all these different places, and Rufus, who's always been adventurous, enjoys the novelty of it. But as they move from one simulation to another, they start to feel this sense of emptiness.
It's like they're craving something more authentic, more raw,
Yeah.
right? They realize that these simulations, while visually impressive, lack the soul, the heart, the unexpected beauty of real-life experiences.
Their reaction to the travel arena is a powerful commentary on our modern obsession with curated experiences.
Totally.
It asks us to consider, are we truly living? If we're only experiencing life through a filter, through a screen, through this carefully constructed simulation.
It's a thought-provoking question, especially in our world where social media often presents us with these idealized, picture-perfect versions of reality.
Right, and it makes Mateo and Rufus's decision to leave the travel arena and return to the streets of New York even more significant. They're choosing authenticity over artificiality, connection over control, and the messy reality of life over the sanitized comfort of simulation.
It's a reminder that sometimes the most meaningful experiences are found in the unexpected moments, the chance encounters, the raw beauty of the world around us.
And their return to the real world leads them to another powerful encounter, the graffiti artist who's tagging walls with the Last Friend logo.
Remember that? I was wondering if we'd come back to that.
Yes.
It seemed like such a small detail, but I had a feeling it was significant.
It's not just about the art itself. It's about what it represents.
Mm.
It shows how Deathcast has infiltrated every aspect of their society,
Right.
even the underground art scene. It's a way for people to express their feelings, their anxieties, their relationship with death through creative expression.
And it reminds us that even in a world overshadowed by death, creativity and beauty can still flourish. People find ways to cope, to find meaning, to connect with each other, even in the face of the unknown.
It's a powerful testament to the resilience of the human spirit, our innate need to express ourselves, to find beauty in the midst of pain, and to create connections that transcend even the boundaries of life and death.
And as Mateo and Rufus witness these expressions of creativity, these moments of connection and resilience, it strengthens their own bond. They're no longer just two strangers thrown together by an app.
Yeah.
They're friends, confidants, almost soulmates, facing their final hours with this shared sense of purpose and understanding.
Their friendship has blossomed in the most unexpected of circumstances, and it's a reminder that even in the face of death, human connection can be a source of profound strength, comfort, and joy.
It's beautiful, isn't it? And it makes you wonder what will happen next. How will their story unfold as the clock ticks down on their end day? So we left off with Mateo and Rufus, feeling that pull back to their roots. Mateo to his father at the hospital, Rufus to his foster family, the Plutos.
Yeah, it's like after this whirlwind day of facing their mortality, they're both craving that familiar comfort, that sense of belonging.
Right, and it's interesting how those choices reflect their individual journeys.
Yeah.
Mateo, who's been searching for connection and meaning outside himself, finally turns inward, seeking solace in the presence of his father, even though his father's in a coma.
It's like he's finally acknowledging that part of himself,
Right. Yeah.
that need for familial love, that longing for a connection that goes beyond words.
And Rufus, who's been trying to outrun his grief over his family's death, finally allows himself to be enveloped by the love and support of his chosen family, the Plutos.
It's a beautiful contrast, wouldn't you say?
It is.
They're both finding peace and closure in their own way, surrounded by the people who represent their past, their present, and the love that has shaped them.
It's a powerful reminder that even as we face the end, our relationships, our families, the bonds we've forged throughout our lives continue to hold immense significance.
And then the unthinkable happens.
Oh.
While Rufus is with the Plutos, Mateo dies suddenly, tragically.
Oh, no.
The way Silvera portrays Mateo's death is so impactful, precisely because of its suddenness. It underscores the unpredictable nature of life How even when we know our time is limited, we can never truly prepare for the moment when it all ends.
That fire alarm going off as Mateo dies, I still get chills thinking about it.
It's powerful.
Such a potent symbol, like a final urgent alert from the universe, a reminder that death can come at any moment without warning.
It's a stark reminder of life's fragility. You know, how even amidst the beauty and the connection, the laughter and the love, there's this underlying current of impermanence. And it leaves Rufus and us as readers grappling with the raw, visceral pain of grief.
I have to say, when I first read that part, I was devastated. I was so invested in their journey, their connection, and then to have it ripped away so abruptly, it's just not fair.
It's not, but life and death don't play by our rules.
Right.
And that's what makes this book so powerful, so real. It doesn't shy away from the messy, painful, unpredictable nature of existence.
But even in the midst of that devastation, there's this glimmer of hope, this act of profound love and remembrance. Rufus goes to the hospital to see Mateo's father, who's still in a coma.
That scene where Rufus shows Mr. Torres photos of Mateo's end day, sharing stories of his courage, his laughter, his newfound joy, is one of the most poignant and heartbreaking moments in the book.
It's like Rufus is trying to keep Mateo's memory alive, not just for himself, but for the father who never got to witness his son's transformation. It's an act of selfless love that transcends grief and loss.
And it speaks to a larger theme that runs throughout the book, the importance of legacy.
Right.
What do we leave behind? How do we make our lives matter, even when they're cut short?
And what about Lydia? How does she cope with Mateo's death?
Well, we see her grappling with this immense weight of grief while trying to care for her young daughter, Penny.
Of course.
It's a reminder that loss ripples outward, affecting not just the individual, but their entire network of relationships.
It's also a testament to the strength and resilience of women like Lydia who navigate loss and heartbreak while still carrying the responsibility of caring for others.
And amidst her own grief, Lydia receives a call from Rufus, who shares memories of Mateo's end day, offering comfort and a connection to the friend she's lost. It's a small act of kindness, but it speaks volumes about the enduring power of human connection, even in the face of death.
And the book ends with Rufus walking through the park, reflecting on his end day, and he wonders, I wonder if Mateo told her about me.
It's such a simple line, but it carries so much weight.
Right.
You know, it suggests that even though Mateo is gone, their connection transcends death. Their story continues, even if we don't get to witness it.
It's like their shared experiences have left an indelible mark on each other's souls, a legacy that extends beyond the boundaries of their physical existence.
And it leaves us as readers contemplating our own mortality, our own relationships, and what we would do if we knew our time was running out.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into They Both Die at the End, what are some key takeaways for our listener?
For me, it's a reminder to embrace life's precious moments, to nurture our relationships, and to find courage in the face of the unknown. You know, it's a reminder that even though death is inevitable, it doesn't have to define us. We have the power to choose how we live, how we love, and what legacy we leave behind.
I couldn't agree more. It's a powerful, thought-provoking book that stays with you long after you turn that final page. And for you listening out there, what resonated with you? What would you do on your end day? Who would you spend it with? What legacy would you want to leave behind?
Take some time to reflect on those questions. Because as Adam Silvera reminds us, it is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live.
And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. If you haven't already, I highly recommend checking out They Both Die at the End. It's a story that will stay with you, challenge you, and maybe even inspire you to live a little bolder, a little kinder, and a little more fully present in each precious moment.
Until next time, keep diving deep, keep questioning, and keep living your story. Because every day is a gift, even ones that come with an expiration date.